In 1939, a German engineer named Hermann Weber sat down at a drafting table in the small Saxon town of Zschopau and designed a motorcycle, a modest little thing, 123 cubic centimeters, a single-cylinder two-stroke with a clever loop-scavenging port design that made it run cleaner and smoother than anything else in its class. The DKW RT 125. Weber had no way of knowing that this motorcycle would become what is widely regarded as the most copied motorcycle design in history. Its blueprints would be made available through post-war reparations and copied by manufacturers across several countries. And within 20 years, the country that copied it best would become the largest motorcycle producer on the planet. That country was Japan. This is the story of how one motorcycle got stolen 4 times. Germany created the template, Japan industrialized it, Europe fought back in the premium segment, and now India is buying up the companies that clawed it back. 75 years, 4 empires, 1 blueprint, and the cycle still is not finished. So let us start at the beginning. Before the war, DKW was a monster. By 1931, the company had already become the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer, operating out of Zschopau in Saxony. Their supercharged split-single racing engines were winning everywhere, including the 1938 Isle of Man lightweight TT. The RT 125 was supposed to be their next great production bike. Then Germany lost the war. As part of the post-war Allied reparations program, the intellectual property of DKW was effectively made available. Patents were voided, and the designs became freely accessible. The blueprints, the tooling, and several dozen DKW engineers were shipped to the Soviet Union, where the bike was reborn as the Moskva M1A. The British Ministry of Supply handed the same design to BSA in Birmingham, who turned it into the Bantam and sold an estimated 400,000 of them over the next 2 decades. Harley-Davidson built their own version in Milwaukee and called it the Hummer. Poland built it, Italy built it, Argentina built it. In 1955, a Japanese piano company built one too. Junichi Kawakami was the president of Nippon Gaki, the musical instrument company we now call Yamaha. During the war, his factories had been converted to build fuel tanks and propeller components for the Mitsubishi Zero fighter. When the war ended, Kawakami wanted to convert that tooling into something useful. He asked his engineers to find the best small motorcycle design in the world. Their answer was unanimous: the German DKW RT 125. With the RT 125 design effectively available after the war, Yamaha's engineers built the YA1 under heavy DKW influence, while improving details like the transmission, the geared primary drive, and the overall finish quality. The result was a beautiful chestnut and cream machine that riders nicknamed Akatambo, the Red Dragonfly. It rolled out of Yamaha's Hamana factory on February 11, 1955. Yamaha Motor Company was formally established 5 months later, on July 1, 1955. The Red Dragonfly won the 125 cubic centimeter class at the Mount Fuji Ascent race that same summer and swept the podium at the Asama Highlands race that November. Yamaha, the motorcycle company, was born from a German blueprint that it quickly made its own. And it was not alone. Suzuki also began with small 2-stroke utility machines, though its 1952 Power Free was not a direct RT 125 copy. Honda was already producing bikes. At the peak of the frenzy, roughly 100 Japanese manufacturers were fighting over a domestic motorcycle market that had exploded from about 11,000 units in 1951 to over 200,000 by 1955, then reached 755,000 in 1959 as the Honda Super Cub hit its stride. By 1960, Japanese factories were producing over 1.3 million motorcycles a year. In under a decade, annual output had multiplied by more than 100-fold. This was not accidental. Japan's post-war industrial system, including M1TY policy, bank finance, supplier networks, and export discipline, helped the strongest firms scale at a pace their British and German rivals could not match. Of those 100-odd Japanese motorcycle firms operating in the early 1950s, only 4 would emerge as globally dominant manufacturers. The Big Four we still know today. While Japan was absorbing and improving foreign designs and building a manufacturing juggernaut, Germany itself was discovering that motorcycles just were not a growth business anymore. Once ordinary families could afford a Volkswagen Beetle, the small displacement two-wheeler market collapsed. And the casualties were devastating. NSU, which had briefly been the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer with around 350,000 units in 1955, got distracted by the Wankel rotary engine and its move into cars. They ceased motorcycle production entirely in 1963 and were eventually absorbed by Volkswagen into what is now Audi. DKW itself was reorganized inside Auto Union, taken over by Daimler-Benz, and its motorcycle production effectively ended in 1966. Adler stopped in 1957, Horex in 1960, Victoria in 1966. Zundap held on until 1984, when its tooling was famously sold to a factory in Tianjin, China. The vintage motorcycle historian Paul d'Orléans called 1956 the year the music died for the European motorcycle industry, as factory after factory pulled out of Grand Prix racing and shut their doors. BMW survived, and so did MZ in East Germany. But most of Germany's mass motorcycle industry had collapsed or shifted away from motorcycles entirely. Within 15 years of the war ending, the country that had built the blueprint was barely in the game. Now, the chapter everyone knows. Japan takes over the world. And the weapon was not just engineering, it was marketing. Honda's American subsidiary opened in Los Angeles on June 11, 1959. At that point, total motorcycle imports to the United States were around 6,300 units per year. The existing market was Harley-Davidson territory, black leather jackets, outlaw imagery, Marlon Brando and the Wild One. Honda looked at that and said, "We're going to sell motorcycles to housewives." In 1963, gray advertising launched what would become one of the most successful ad campaigns in history. You meet the nicest people on a Honda. It ran in Life, Look, Time, and the Saturday Evening Post with a $5 million budget, which was enormous money for motorcycle advertising. The ads showed college students, young professionals, and suburban families riding Honda Super Cubs, not leather-clad rebels. And it worked beyond anyone's wildest projections. Total U.S. motorcycle sales in 1959 were about 6,300 imports. By 1963, they had exploded to roughly 148,000, with Honda driving the vast majority of that growth. By 1964, Honda alone commanded more than 50% of the entire American motorcycle market. The Beach Boys released Little Honda that year. Not a paid jingle, just a cultural moment. The Honda Super Cub passed 60 million cumulative units in 2008, then 100 million in 2017. It remains the most produced motor vehicle in human history. Not motorcycle, motor vehicle, period. This is where the story turns tragic for the British. BSA Triumph accounted for 80% of UK motorcycle exports in 1969. At its peak in the 1950s, BSA Group claimed to be producing 1 out of every 4 motorcycles sold anywhere on Earth. In December 1965, legendary designer Edward Turner returned from touring Honda, Yamaha, and Suzuki factories and warned the BSA board that the Japanese were about to overrun them. Turner had seen their automated production lines, their quality control systems, their relentless new model cadence. The board ignored him. They thought the Japanese were making toys. By 1971, BSA Group was reporting a £3 million trading loss, despite having received the Queen's Award to Industry just 3 years earlier. By 1973, BSA had collapsed. Production was consolidated into Norton Villiers Triumph under government pressure, which then collapsed into a workers' cooperative at Meriden. Workers staged a 2-year sit-in to keep making Bonnevilles, limping along until 1983. The technological gap tells the full story. Even Triumph's 1968 Trident Triple traced its engine architecture back to the 1937 Speed Twin. Same basic layout 3 decades later. The Japanese started clean. Clean won. And nothing proved that quite like the Honda CB750. Unveiled in Tokyo in October 1968 and launched globally in 1969, the CB750 was a generational rupture. Inline-4 motorcycles had existed before, from Indian and Henderson in the pre-war era to MV Agusta's tiny volume 600 in 1966. But the CB750 was the first mass-produced transverse inline-4 and the first production motorcycle with a hydraulic front disc brake, electric start, 5-speed gearbox, 124 miles per hour top speed, and a US launch price of just $1,495, while many exotic European multi-cylinder machines cost 2 or 3 times that. When American Honda president Kiichiro Kawashima announced that price at the Las Vegas dealer meeting in January 1969, 2,000 dealers reportedly erupted in applause. Cycle magazine called it the most sophisticated production bike ever. The British press coined a new word for it, superbike. This is when the Japanese were no longer copying anyone. They were defining what a motorcycle should be. And the arms race that followed was relentless. Kawasaki had been secretly developing their own 750 cubic centimeters four-cylinder when the CB750 dropped. They saw it, scrapped the project entirely, and went back to the drawing board. The result was the 1972 Kawasaki Z1, 903 cubic centimeters. Double overhead cams, 81 horsepower. It took the superbike crown straight from Honda and held it. Suzuki answered with the GT750 Water Buffalo, a two-stroke triple with water cooling in 1971, then pivoted to four strokes with the GS series from 1976. Yamaha's RD series two-stroke twins became racetrack legends through the entire 1970s. By the mid-1970s, the pattern was so consistent across all four Japanese brands that journalists coined the acronym UJM, Universal Japanese Motorcycle. Transverse air-cooled multis, usually inline fours, electric start, disc brakes, predictable handling, and interchangeable proportions. If you walked into a dealership in 1978 and squinted, a Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Kawasaki looked almost interchangeable. The engineering was superb, the brand differentiation was almost non-existent, and that would matter later. By 1980, Harley-Davidson, which had held a 100% share of the US market for bikes over 1,000 cubic centimeters just a decade earlier, was down to less than 15%. Harley's sales dropped from $289 million in 1980 to roughly $200 million by 1982. Japanese manufacturers were undercutting Harley by $1,500 to $2,000 per bike. On April 1, 1983, President Reagan signed a 45% tariff on imported motorcycles over 700 cubic centimeters to save Harley from extinction. The tariff phased down annually and expired in 1988, a year early, at Harley's own request, after they had recovered enough to compete. It worked. Barely. Now here is the part of the story most people never heard about. The moment of peak Japanese dominance was not a victory over Europe, it was a civil war. In August 1981, Yamaha's president Hisao Koike publicly announced a new factory that would give Yamaha capacity of 4 million motorcycles per year, enough to overtake Honda as the world's largest producer. Honda had held that title since 1959, and Honda took this personally. What followed is now studied in business schools as the Honda-Yamaha War. In just 18 months, Honda introduced 113 new models, more than 6 new bikes per month, while discontinuing 32 of their own existing models. They pushed disc brakes, electronic ignition, water cooling, and turbocharging to market faster than Yamaha's research and development could keep pace. By early 1983, Yamaha's unsold inventory equaled roughly half the entire Japanese industry's total stock. Their debt ratio went from less than 3-to-1 to 7-to-1. Sales fell by more than 50%. Yamaha's president made a public surrender. "We want to end the HY war. It is our fault. We cannot match Honda's sales and product strength." Yamaha would never seriously challenge Honda for volume leadership again. The Honda-Yamaha war was the high watermark of pure Japanese dominance. And coincidentally, it happened at almost exactly the same moment that Europe figured out how to fight back. The European industry could not beat Honda on volume. That was obvious. What BMW, Ducati, Triumph, and KTM discovered was that there was a defensible lane above the commodity Japanese motorcycle, a premium lane. And the Japanese, locked in their own price and displacement wars, were badly positioned to occupy it. It started with one weird bike that nobody understood. In September 1980, BMW Motorrad unveiled the R80 GS at the Cologne Motorcycle Show. GS stood for Gelände Straße, literally off-road and road. It had a 798 cubic centimeter air-cooled flat twin boxer engine, a 21-inch front wheel, long travel suspension, and BMW's new single-sided monolever swing arm. It was big, heavy, and not particularly capable off-road. First reactions were skeptical. Then it started winning everything. In 1981, Hubert Oriol won the Paris-Dakar Rally outright on a Works R80 GS. BMW won again in 1983, 1984, and 1985 with Belgian motocross champion Gaston Rahier. First-year sales hit more than 6,000 units, double BMW's own forecast. The R80 GS essentially invented a motorcycle category that did not exist before 1980, the large-capacity adventure touring motorcycle. Its descendants, the R1100 GS, R1150 GS, R1200 GS, R1250 GS, and the current R1300 GS, have collectively sold over 500,000 units. When BMW launched the R1200 GS in 2004, Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman's Long Way Round turned it into a cultural phenomenon. By 2017, the GS Travel Enduro models alone were topping 50,000 units a year, and BMW's entire R-Series Boxer family accounted for over half of all BMW motorcycles sold. In 2024, BMW Motorrad set an all-time sales record of 210,498 motorcycles, with over 68,000 GS variants alone. BMW did not just build a motorcycle, they built an entire market segment and then dominated it for 4 decades. While BMW was creating the adventure category, Ducati was doing something equally audacious in sport bikes. In 1985, the Italian brand was essentially a state-owned corps producing about 3,000 bikes a year. The Castiglione brothers Cagiva Group rescued it, hired engineer Massimo Bordi, and in 1987 unveiled the Ducati 851 with liquid cooling, fuel injection, and a double overhead Cam V twin. When the Superbike World Championship launched in 1988, Ducati was ready. Their record in WSBK is almost incomprehensible. 20 manufacturer world titles, over 400 race wins, more than 1,000 podium finishes, more than double the second-place manufacturer. The Ducati 916, designed by Massimo Tamburini and launched in 1994, became one of the most beautiful and successful sport bikes ever built. Ducati has won every WSBK manufacturer's title since 2022, and its dominance has been nearly unbroken since the championship began. Then there is the Triumph story, which might be the best comeback in motorcycle history. In October 1983, after the Meriden Worker Cooperative finally collapsed, a British property developer named John Bloor attended the auction of the Triumph factory site. He was planning to buy the land for housing. Instead, he bought the Triumph brand and manufacturing rights from the official receiver for £150,000, narrowly beating Cagiva and Harley-Davidson, who were both interested. For context, that is less than the price of one Ducati Panigale V4R today. For 7 years, almost nobody knew what Bloor was doing. He licensed a small operation in Devon run by Les Harris to build about 14 Bonnevilles per week, just enough to keep the production record technically unbroken. Meanwhile, his secret team at a small unit in Bedworth toured Japanese factories, tore down Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Kawasaki bikes in private, and designed modular 3-cylinder and 4-cylinder engines from scratch. He hired engineers who had never worked in the old British motorcycle industry because he did not want their bad habits. The new Triumph Motorcycles Limited unveiled 6 liquid-cooled models at the 1990 Cologne show. The first Hinckley Triumphs reached customers in 1991. Bloor invested between 70 million and 100 million pounds of his own money. Every component supplier was Japanese or European at first, because Britain no longer had a domestic motorcycle parts industry. The company did not post its first profit until 2000. A devastating fire destroyed half the Hinckley factory in March 2002. Triumph, rebuilt from scratch, opened a Thai factory in Chonburi the same year and kept going. Today, under John's son, Nick Bloor, Triumph is the largest UK-owned motorcycle manufacturer, selling a record 134,635 motorcycles globally in 2024, including roughly 30,000 Bajaj, built 400 cubic centimeter models in India, and expanding into off-road racing with the TF250X. And then there is KTM. This one is wild. In December 1991, the Austrian company filed for one of the largest corporate bankruptcies in Upper Austria's history, with debts of 73 million euros. When production restarted in January 1992 under Styrian industrialist Stefan Pierer, the company had exactly 160 employees and a planned annual output of just 6,700 motorcycles. Pierer's strategy was brutal simplicity, focus on off-road, build a racing mythology, and win everything. KTM went on to win 18 consecutive Dakar rallies from 2001 to 2019. They acquired Husaberg, WP Suspension, Husqvarna from BMW, GasGas, and a majority stake in MV Agusta. By 2023, KTM was reporting a 13th consecutive record year with 381,555 motorcycles sold and revenue of 2.66 billion euros. From 160 employees to that scale in just over 30 years. The European playbook across BMW, Ducati, Triumph, and KTM was identical. Premium pricing, deep brand storytelling, motorsport investment way out of proportion to their sales volume, and selective markets focusing on Europe and North America rather than chasing low displacement sales in Asia. The Japanese, locked into commodity production and still dealing with the structural overcapacity left over from the Honda-Yamaha war, never managed to defend the premium lane. Honda's Africa Twin, Yamaha's Tenere, and Suzuki's V-Strom would eventually try to compete with the BMW GS, but they never displaced it. Now, the part of this story that is happening right now in real time. India enters the game. If you have been paying attention to the pattern, you already know where this is going. Massive domestic market, government industrial policy, family business clusters acting like the Japanese Keiretsu, joint ventures with foreign technology partners, and then acquisitions of struggling premium brands at distressed prices. Hero Motocorp started as a joint venture between the Munjal family's Hero Cycles and Honda in 1984. By the early 2000s, it had passed Honda Motor Company itself in unit volume to become the world's largest two-wheeler manufacturer by sheer count. In January 2021, cumulative production passed 100 million units. India's domestic two-wheeler market reached approximately 19.5 million units in 2024, according to the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, making it by far the largest in the world. Bajaj. Auto's progression toward ownership of KTM is the clearest data point in this entire story, and it reads like a slow-motion hostile takeover disguised as a partnership. Bajaj bought 14.5% of KTM in 2007. By 2013, they held 47.97%. From Bajaj's factory in Chakan, near Pune, Indian workers were already building KTM's most popular models, the 200 Duke and the 390 Duke, for global distribution. The small KTMs that European riders loved were made in India. Most buyers had no idea. Then in late 2024, everything fell apart. KTM's parent company, Pierer Mobility AG, collapsed under the weight of multiple crises at once. A post-pandemic motorcycle inventory glut left roughly 130,000 unsold bikes sitting in warehouses. An aggressive push into e-bikes drained around 400 million euros in cash in 2023 alone. Acquisitions of GasGas, MV Agusta, and the Felt bicycle brand had stretched the balance sheet to breaking point. Total group debt went from 250 million euros in 2022 to 1.7 billion euros by 2024. KTM AG filed for restructuring with reported liabilities of around 1.9 billion euros, with 3,534 claims filed, 2,347 of them from employees. Stefan Pierer stepped down as CEO in January 2025. The man who had spent 33 years building KTM from 160 employees into a European giant said on his way out that KTM was his life's work and he would fight for it. He was no longer in a position to. Bajaj injected 800 million euros to keep the company alive. CF Moto, the Chinese manufacturer, reportedly bid 700 million euros for KTM and was outbid. The deal closed in November 2025. Bajaj Auto International Holdings became the sole owner of the holding company above KTM, controlling roughly 74.9% of the listed parent. The shareholder vote to rename Pierer Mobility AG to Bajaj Mobility AG followed immediately, and the new name took legal effect on January 13, 2026 on the Vienna and Zurich stock exchanges. Bajaj now owns the brand that defined Europe's motorcycle renaissance. The symbolism is hard to miss. Bajaj is not alone. In April 2020, TVS Motor Company of Chennai acquired the iconic British brand Norton Motorcycles out of administration for just £16 million. Norton, which had been on its knees under chaotic mismanagement, was producing maybe 500 units a year. TVS has since invested more than £200 million in Norton, opened a new Solihull facility, and announced a further £250 million investment package in October 2025, covering new electric motorcycle development and expanded R&D. And then there is Royal Enfield, the unlikeliest revival of them all. In 2000, Royal Enfield was a near corpse buried inside Eicher Motors' sprawling portfolio of 15 businesses. The brand dated back to 1901, making it the oldest motorcycle marque in continuous production anywhere on Earth. But continuous was a generous word for what Royal Enfield was doing in the late 1990s. Siddhartha Lal became CEO at the age of 26. He later admitted that the board gave him the job mostly because the business was doing so badly it could hardly get worse. Lal made two structural decisions that changed everything. First, he sold 13 of Eicher's 15 businesses, stripping the company down to just Royal Enfield and the truck arm, which became a Volvo joint venture. Second, instead of competing on volume with Hero or Bajaj in the commuter segment, he repositioned Royal Enfield in the premium midweight space. Heritage-styled 250 to 750 cubic centimeters, rugged thumping motorcycles with rider clubs, Himalayan adventure marketing, and a community-first brand identity that felt more like Harley-Davidson than Honda. Sales went from about 25,000 annual units in 2004 to nearly 589,000 by 2014. The Interceptor 650 and Continental GT 650, launched in 2018, turned Royal Enfield into a genuine global player. The Himalayan adventure bike gave them a foot in the category BMW had invented with the GS. Eicher Motors today is valued at over $12 billion. Lal pulled off a Bloor, except in India, and at 10 times the scale. The structural parallels between the 2020s in India and the 1950s in Japan are hard to ignore. A massive domestic market absorbing enormous production volumes, government policy supporting manufacturing and exports, family business clusters with patient capital and long-term vision, joint ventures with foreign partners that eventually became acquisitions. The playbook keeps working because the underlying logic is structural. There are limits to the parallel, though. Japanese manufacturers in the 1960s exported globally competitive products and conquered foreign markets directly. Indian manufacturers today still sell more than 90% of their volume domestically. Their global reach is being built primarily through ownership, not exports. Hero MotoCorp's exports were just 5.1% of total in the first half of 2025. So where does that leave us? The motorcycle world today divides into four distinct competitive zones. In the sub-150 cubic centimeters commuter segment, Indian manufacturers dominate India's enormous domestic market by volume. Hero MotoCorp alone sells around 6 million motorcycles per year. India's total two-wheeler domestic sales approached 19.5 million units in 2024, dwarfing every other single country market on Earth. In the mid-weight 150 to 500 cubic centimeters range, Honda and Yamaha compete with Royal Enfield and KTM for the hearts of riders who want something more than a commuter but less than a touring rig. In the large displacement adventure and sports segments, BMW, Ducati, KTM, and Triumph own the premium, with BMW's GS line still commanding over 30% market share in the adventure category it created. And in superbike racing, Ducati is so far ahead of everyone else with 20 manufacturer titles and over 400 wins that it is almost not a competition anymore. Look at the pattern across all four eras, and you start to see the same playbook running over and over. A rising nation with a massive domestic market, patient capital, and government support starts by copying foreign designs. It uses joint ventures to learn, then builds its own manufacturing base. It undercuts established players on price. The established players either adapt to the premium lane or they die. And eventually, the new entrant buys the companies that once looked down on them. Germany did this in the 1930s, Japan did it in the 1950s and 60s. India is doing it right now. The question everyone in the industry is asking is whether India's motorcycle companies will follow Japan's path and eventually dominate global exports, or whether they will remain primarily domestic producers who own foreign brands. The answer probably depends on whether Indian manufacturers can build bikes that European and American riders want to buy under Indian names, not just under the Austrian, British, and Italian brands they have acquired. What started in 1939 on a drafting table in Zschopau has traveled through Allied reparations offices, Japanese piano factories, British bankruptcy courts, Austrian restructuring deals, and Indian boardrooms. 4 empires built on the same blueprint, each one copying the last, each one convinced they were different. The DKW RT 125 is widely regarded as the most copied motorcycle design in history. 85 years after Hermann Weber drew it, the manufacturers it spawned are still copying each other. The names on the tank keep changing. The cycle does not. And if history is any guide, we are about 70 years into the pattern, which means the next handoff is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. If you made it this far, you clearly care about motorcycles as much as we do. Hit subscribe, because we have a lot more stories like this one coming. And drop a comment telling us who you think writes the next chapter, India, China, or someone nobody is watching yet.